The zombie apocalypse started, and I only survived the first week. I came back to life for the sole purpose of saving my so-called friends. This time, I reinforced my apartment, stockpiled supplies, and prepared for everything. I brought my parents over to live with me. Our small family hunkered down in our top-floor apartment, committed to one single principle. We save ourselves and no one else. We were going to do whatever it took to survive the end of the world. I was reborn. And it wasn't a dream. I opened my eyes and found myself in my office. As I was still processing the memories of my past life, Chloe walked up to me, smiling. "Jenna," she asked, "a new store opened up today. Want to go check it out?" I looked at her. Her smile was as sweet as ever, so sweet that in my last life, I was completely fooled by it. I was a fool who kindly saved her, only to be betrayed. The memories of my past life flooded back. That's right. In 2 days, the zombies would appear. I could still feel the phantom pain of being torn apart by them. A deep ache that felt like it was in the marrow of my bones. There was no time to waste. I quickly shut down my computer, not wanting to look at her fake face for a second longer. "I'm not feeling well today. You go on without me." Without waiting for her reply, I grabbed my bag, submitted a leave request on my phone, and walked out of the office. The zombies would start appearing in massive numbers in 2 days. I had so much to do before then. I hailed a cab at the corner and went straight to the building supply district. In the car, I tallied up my cash. I pulled all the money out of my investment accounts and combined with what was in my bank account, I had a total of $58,000. It wasn't enough. Who knew how long the zombies would last? I had to plan for the long term. So I called my dad. "Dad, that condo we looked at last time? I've thought about it, and I think it's a great fit. I'm going to sign the contract now. Can you transfer the money to my account?" It was a dirty trick, but I had no other choice. If I tried to tell him about the zombies, he and my mom would never believe me. It's just how their generation is. They'd rather believe some article they saw on Facebook than a single word from someone standing right in front of them. Hearing that the house purchase was finally settled, my dad was overjoyed on the other end of the line. He agreed immediately. "Oh, and tomorrow is the weekend," I added. "You and Mom should pack a few things and come visit for a couple of days. You can take another look at the place." I had to get them over here. In my last life, I couldn't reach them, and the despair of losing my parents was something I never wanted to experience again. Buying a house was a big deal, so my dad discussed it with my mom and they agreed. At my insistence, they promised they would arrive by 6 p.m. the next day. Only then did I feel a sense of relief. After I hung up, my phone buzzed. The money had arrived. I looked at the notification, $50,000. This gave me even more confidence that I could get through the coming disaster. "You're a lucky girl," the cab driver said from the front seat. "My daughter graduated college 2 years ago, and she's still nowhere near buying a place." He sighed. "We can't help much. Just earn what we can. It's hard work." I could see the gray hairs peeking out from the edge of his headrest. A wave of sadness washed over me. I wasn't sure what to say. In this day and age, I offered, trying to comfort him, "As long as your family is healthy, safe, and has enough to eat and wear, you're already very fortunate." "Yeah, that's what my daughter tells us too," he said. "But what parent doesn't want their kid to have a better life? I'll keep working hard while I still can." Just as he finished speaking, we arrived at the building supply district. I quickly paid the fare. As I got out, I couldn't help but give him a warning. "Sir, prices for things might go up in a few days. You should probably stock up on some extra food and daily necessities. Take care." After getting out of the car, I headed straight for a glass shop and a security door store. I picked out 2.5-inch thick bomb-proof glass and 5 of the heaviest-duty security doors available. I paid a $10,000 deposit and slipped the manager an extra $500, telling him I needed them installed tomorrow morning, no matter what. The manager, happy with the bonus, grinned and promised it would be done. I left my address, we exchanged numbers, and then I headed to the next store. I walked around and found a steel supplier, where I selected a batch of heavy-duty steel bars. I paid a $2,000 deposit and arranged for a welder to come tomorrow afternoon to install security bars on my windows. For safety, I had to turn my apartment into a fortress. Next, I went to a hardware store and bought 2 shovels, 2 hoes, 3 pairs of very sharp heavy-duty shears, 10 large iron chains, 10 heavy padlocks, 5 slide bolts, and 10 door jammers. I spotted a diesel generator in the corner of the shop and bought one of those too. After paying, I asked the owner to box everything up for me, and I'd be back later to pick it all up. Based on my last life, I knew that zombies were highly sensitive to light and sound. With that in mind, I went to a store that sold soundproofing materials and bought a large amount of acoustic foam. I planned to use it to block all the gaps around the doors. After buying all that, I wandered around the district a bit more. I ordered 10 250-gallon water tanks and had some stainless steel shelving custom made to fit my rooms. I also bought several bags of cement mix. The shelving had to be custom built overnight and would be delivered tomorrow, but the water tanks and cement could be taken today. I paid the water tank supplier for delivery and loaded the cement and the tools from the hardware store onto their truck. Cement was something I'd decided on after careful consideration. It was a cost-effective last resort. If all my other security measures failed, I could use it to seal the doors completely. It was an extreme measure, but I was willing to do it to survive. We got to my building's underground garage. Since most people weren't home from work yet, I gave the driver an extra $50 and asked him to help me move everything upstairs. The cement, generator, and other tools went into my apartment, while the water tanks went directly onto the roof. I had rented a top-floor apartment to save money and hassle. I never thought that simple decision would become a lifesaver when the apocalypse hit. As long as I blocked the fire escape and the elevator stopped working after the power went out, the entire top floor and roof could become my personal storage space. I was so grateful for my past self. The items weren't numerous, but they were bulky. The driver and I made several trips. By the time we were done, it was rush hour. I told the driver to head home, then went inside and made myself some instant ramen. After eating, I started taking inventory of my supplies. 2 packs of instant ramen, 5 self-heating hot pots, 1 10-pound bag of rice, 1 bag of frozen dumplings, 2 bags each of instant shumai and soup dumplings, a 2-pound bag of flour, 20 eggs, and an assortment of snacks and seasonings. I'd stock up on more food in the next 2 days. Right now, the most important thing was to clear out furniture to make space for the renovations tomorrow, and the supplies that would follow. My apartment was a 2-bedroom, not particularly large. To make room for the supplies, I used all my strength to move the bed from the spare bedroom into the master bedroom, placing them side by side like in a hotel room. I completely emptied the spare bedroom. I also got rid of all the clutter and useless junk in the living room, packing it up and throwing it out. The things I needed, I organized and stacked neatly. After all that, the apartment felt much bigger. After a quick shower, I made a shopping list. That was pretty much it for today's tasks. I'd been busy since the afternoon, only pulling out my phone to pay for things. Finally, I could sit down on the sofa and catch my breath. I picked up my phone and saw a bunch of messages. They were all from Chloe, filled with fake concern. Thinking of her face as she pushed me out the door in my last life, I resisted the urge to curse her out and just deleted the conversation. Chloe and I had started at the company around the same time. We were close in age, so we'd often chat while slacking off at work. Over time, we became such good friends that she even moved into my apartment complex a while back, in the same building. We'd often visit each other, gossip, and complain about our boss. If it weren't for what happened in my last life, I probably would have been deceived by her sweet-looking face forever. Another message popped up on my phone. It was Chloe. Jenna, why aren't you replying? I bought you some medicine. I'm almost at your place. My doorbell and phone rang at the same time. I checked my Ring camera. It was Chloe. I used the two-way talk feature and asked what she wanted. She seemed surprised that my tone was so cold I wouldn't even open the door. Her expression froze for a second, but then she must have remembered I could see her through the camera. She put on a hurt look. Jenna, what's wrong? Did I do something to make you mad? It's nothing. I'm going to bed. You should go home and rest too. I hung up the call but kept the camera feed open. Chloe whined outside my door for a bit longer. When she saw I wasn't responding, the fake sincerity in her eyes faded away, replaced by a venomous glare at my door. Finally, She turned and left. Clearly, Chloe was going to be a problem. But I didn't have the energy to deal with her right now. I'd wait. Once I had my own survival sorted out, then I'd handle her. Maybe because my nerves were so frayed, I dreamt of my last life that night. In the dream, I heard Chloe's screams getting closer and closer. I hid behind my door, watching her run up the fire escape to my floor, yelling for me to open up. The moment she reached me, I threw the door open and pulled her inside with all my strength. But the zombies were too fast. Their rotting, purple-tinged hands gripped the edge of the door, and I couldn't close it. I turned to yell for Chloe to help, but before I could speak, a powerful force shoved me from behind. I stumbled into the horde of zombies. Jenna, save me. You go. I don't want to die. I looked back in disbelief. Chloe had already slammed the door shut. Why? Why? I risked my life to save you. And you sacrifice me just to save yourself? The hatred was overwhelming. I hated her so much. Ding dong. The doorbell jolted me awake. I stared at the ceiling as more images from my past life flashed through my mind. That's right. After the outbreak, since we lived in the same building, Chloe and I had been in contact. She lived on the 18th floor. She was always on a diet, so she had no food stored at home. After the zombies came, she survived for a while on the few whole wheat crackers and instant corn she had. When I contacted her, she had already been starving for 3 days. I remember the moment I found out about her situation. My savior complex kicked in, and I immediately told her to come to my place. She hesitated at first. After all, the world outside her door was no longer safe. But when I told her how much food I had stored, she immediately said she would try. Looking back, the signs were there. It was my fault for thinking of her as a friend and not seeing them. Ding dong, ding dong. The doorbell rang again. I grabbed my phone and checked the camera. It was the installers for the bomb-proof glass and security doors. I quickly got up, washed my face, and let them in. Sorry, I didn't hear the bell earlier, I said, handing each of them a pack of cigarettes. Thanks for coming, guys. They had looked a little annoyed, but my politeness made them smile. They all said they understood that young people like to sleep in on weekends. I then handed them the red envelopes I had prepared. We had a break-in a while back. We filed a police report, but they never caught the guy. Please make sure everything is installed as securely as possible. It has to be done today. Between the cigarettes and the cash, who could resist? The installers promised they would, rolling up their sleeves and getting right to work. Since they were starting, it was time for me to start my busy day too. I changed my clothes, explained the specific installation locations and requirements to the crew, and then called a car to take me to a rental agency. I was in such a rush that I bought breakfast to eat on the way. I rented a small pickup truck, paid the deposit, and immediately drove to rent a storage unit not far from my home. Then, I headed straight for the wholesale market. The wholesale market in my city was huge, with different sections for food, clothing, household goods, and more. I could get most of my shopping done in one stop. The closest section was the food market. 50 25-pound bags of rice, 50 10-pound bags of all-purpose flour, 50 bags of bread flour, 50 bundles of dried rice noodles, 20 packets of dry yeast, 20 pounds each of millet, adzuki beans, mung beans, black rice, and cornmeal. 10 cases each of instant corn, instant flat noodles, self-heating hot pots, instant ramen, instant soy milk powder, and powdered milk. 20 pounds each of various pickles, 50 pounds of chili sauces, 20 pounds of dried shrimp, 50 bags of salt, 30 bottles each of soy sauce, dark soy sauce, oyster sauce, and Lao Gan Ma chili crisp. A case of bouillon cubes, 50 cases of assorted canned goods. 50 pounds each of fresh pork, beef, chicken, and fish. 20 pounds each of potatoes, sweet potatoes, and pumpkins. 10 pounds of fresh leafy greens. 100 cases of bottled water. With the food mostly purchased, I drove the truck to the storage unit to unload everything, then went to the department store section. 5,000 disposable bowls, 5,000 pairs of disposable chopsticks, 100 rolls each of small, medium, and large trash bags. 10 large buckets and wash basins. 100 bottles each of moisturizing cream, dry shampoo, and hand sanitizer. 100 bottles of rubbing alcohol, 500 masks. 10 large bottles each of laundry detergent, body wash and shampoo. 50 bottles of disinfectant. 20 sets of light, breathable summer clothes for each of my parents and me. 10 long down coats for each of us. 20 sets of thermal underwear for each of us. 10 pairs of slippers for each of us. And a bunch of socks, gloves, and scarves. My apartment wasn't that big, so I bought less of the things that would last a long time, like shampoo. A month after the outbreak, the water and power would be shut off. Even with stored water, it wouldn't be like living normally. So, I didn't need to buy too much. When survival itself is a question, you can't worry about much else. I loaded everything into the truck. Seeing some empty space, I made a detour to a garden supply store on the way back to the storage unit. I bought 100 pounds of potting soil, 50 pounds of fertilizer, 10 rectangular planter boxes, and 50 packets of various vegetable and fruit seeds. After hauling everything into the storage unit, I rubbed my aching back and checked my phone. It was already noon. I drove the truck back to the wholesale market and found a small restaurant nearby to eat. After a morning of shopping and heavy lifting, I was starving. I ordered braised pork knuckle and scrambled eggs with tomato, ready to refuel. While waiting for the food, I took out my phone and cataloged the supplies I bought that morning. Food, clothes, and daily necessities were covered. In the afternoon, I could check out the outdoor supply store for things like portable stoves and solar generators. Not far from there was the electronics district, so I could also pick up some power banks and devices to pass the time. As I was planning, the food arrived. I heaped a big bowl of rice and spooned the scrambled eggs with tomato over it. The green onions were a perfect garnish. The eggs were fluffy, and the fresh tomato was a perfect complement. I could eat 3 bowls of rice with just this dish. A few bites of rice, a few chunks of pork knuckle. It was pure happiness. I cherished this moment. In just one day, it would be a different world. I finished the last piece of pork knuckle, let out a satisfying burp, paid the bill, and headed to my next destination. At the outdoor supply store, I bought 10 portable butane stoves, 200 butane canisters, and 5 cases of solid alcohol fuel. The gas and alcohol could be used for cooking and heating, and in a pinch, I could use them for self-defense. They were a good value. I also bought 2 pairs of high-power, night vision binoculars and 5 solar panels. The diesel generator was loud and diesel was a finite resource. In contrast, solar energy was clean and renewable. I could install them on the roof, and they would be enough to power small appliances. I grabbed the instruction manual and had the store owner teach me how to install them, recording a video on my phone just in case. I left that store feeling very satisfied. I loaded my new gear into the truck and drove 2 minutes to the electronics district. I bought 50 power banks, each with 20,000 milliamp hours, and had the shop charge them all for me. Then I bought 6 iPads with 512 gigabytes of storage, and asked the staff to download as many TV shows, movies, and home workout videos as they could. I also bought 5 battery-powered security cameras, another digital peephole, and 5 drones, and the shop owner threw in 50 pairs of batteries for free. While waiting for the power banks and iPads, I browsed the nearby stores. I saw a sporting goods store and went in, buying a small stationary bike and a set of adjustable dumbbells. Besides weapons, I needed to build up my own strength. Before, the stress and long hours of my job had left me with low muscle mass and a weak constitution. Now, with the apocalypse looming, I could use the time at home to exercise. It would keep me healthy and help me protect myself and my family. My family and I will survive this. When I went back to the store to pick up the power banks and iPads, I noticed a shop selling security equipment. I walked in. They had riot shields, steel poles, and other common crowd control gear. Those might be useful for maintaining order, but they wouldn't be much help in the apocalypse. I turned to leave, but something in the corner of a glass display case caught my eye. I stopped. "Boss, I'll take 5 of these stun batons." After confirming they were fully charged, I paid. The owner wrapped them in a black plastic bag and handed them to me. I took them. They were surprisingly heavy. I put the batons in the truck first, then went back for the iPads and power banks. A glance at the time told me it was already 5 p.m., so I drove straight back to my building and found a parking spot in a corner of the garage. Back in my apartment, the security doors were already installed. The workers were sitting on the side, taking a break. I poured them some water and pulled out the slide bolts I'd bought yesterday, asking them to install one at the top, middle, and bottom of the fire escape door. The workers were confused by this, thinking I was a bit paranoid. I had to explain that a creep from downstairs had once tried to spy on me from the fire escape. At that, their mood shifted. Muttering curses under their breaths, they went to install the bolts. The bomb-proof glass and security bars were almost finished. I walked over to the window to check. The welded steel bars were solid. While I waited, I transferred the final payment to the security door company. The bolts on the fire escape door were done. I smiled and saw the workers to the elevator, reminding them to stock up on food and water. They were good people trying to make a living. I hoped they would make it. The security bars and bomb-proof glass were finished one after another. I poured the workers some water, sent the final payment, and saw them to the elevator with the same warning. I was about to start cleaning up when the elevator dinged. The moment the doors opened, I felt a lump in my throat. Mom, Dad. I ran to them. It was a reunion after a long separation. The heavy weight in my heart finally lifted. Hey, sweetie, my mom said, smiling as she took my hand. It hasn't been that long. You missed us already? Hold on a second, my dad said, his brow furrowed as he stared at the open doorway. Did this place get robbed? Only then did my mom notice the mess at the entrance. Oh my God, she exclaimed. No, I said, my heart pounding as I tried to figure out how to explain. I led them inside and locked the 3 security doors behind us. I had them sit on the sofa. There was no point in beating around the bush. Mom, Dad, I have to tell you something, I said, my voice serious. This might sound crazy, but you have to believe me. The end of the world is coming. In 2 days, the zombies will appear. I saw their expressions turn strange. I pressed on. The reason I know this is because I've already died once. In my last life, I was killed a month after the outbreak. I never thought I'd be reborn. And the person who killed me, you know her. It was Chloe. She ran out of food, so I tried to save her and let her come to my place. But she pushed me into a horde of zombies. I'm not crazy, I continued. I had the apartment reinforced, I just haven't had time to clean up. And I didn't use that $50,000 to buy a house. I used it all to buy supplies. The apocalypse is really coming. If you still don't believe me, please just don't go back home. Stay here for a few days. You'll see what I mean. As I spoke, my parents' faces went through a dozen different expressions. Finally, after a long silence, they both sighed. My mom wiped away a tear and stood up to hug me. My dad, his eyes red, patted my hand. Are all the supplies here? He asked. Let's clean up today, and tomorrow we can split up and get whatever's missing. Tears streamed down my face. They believed me. Wiping my eyes, I grabbed a broom and a mop. As we cleaned, I felt like I had boundless energy. This was the most relief I'd felt since I was reborn. After cleaning, the 3 of us quietly drove to my storage unit. Under the cover of darkness, we moved everything upstairs. By the time we finished, it was 4 a.m. I took a quick shower and was about to go to sleep, but my mom started asking about my previous life again. Her tears flowed as she listened, and finally, my dad couldn't take it anymore and dragged her back to their room. I set an alarm for 7 a.m. The next morning, we all woke up with dark circles under our eyes. Over breakfast, we reviewed the supplies I had bought. Based on their life experience, they suggested a few more things we needed. After a half-hour discussion, we decided that my dad and I would go out for one last shopping trip, while my mom stayed home to organize the supplies and text us if she thought of anything we missed. On the way to the store in the pickup truck, my dad suddenly asked, Jenna, what about the other people living on this floor? I smiled. Don't worry, Dad. I already checked. One apartment is empty and hasn't even been renovated. The people in another one are out of the country on a business trip. And the tenants in the last one moved out last month when their lease ended. The family on the business trip hadn't returned even after the outbreak in my last life, so they were likely gone for good. That meant we were the only ones on the entire floor. We were so lucky. My dad nodded, seemingly relieved. Following my dad's suggestions, we bought a large chest freezer, a full toolbox, 3 half-meter-long machetes, a few rugs, and a supply of common medicines and other useful items. By noon, we were sure we had everything we needed and headed home. When we got back, my mom had lunch ready. I hadn't eaten my mom's cooking in so long. The smell made my mouth water. I devoured 2 bowls of rice before I was finally satisfied. "Jenna, that Chloe girl came looking for you today," my mom said, sitting down in front of me with a frown. "She said you were mad at her and wanted to apologize. I told her you weren't home and to stop coming around. She wouldn't listen. She cried at the door for half an hour before she finally left. Just hearing her name made me annoyed." "Mom, you didn't say anything else to her, did you?" My mom sat up straight. "I just told her not to come back. I didn't even let her in the door. The person who hurt my daughter. I can't even stand the thought of her. Why would I talk to her?" I nodded in approval. "Exactly. After the apocalypse starts, the world changes. There's no law, no food. People will even resort to cannibalism. It's not just Chloe. We can't trust anyone but ourselves." Seeing both my parents nod firmly, I smiled, cleared the table, and said, "We're not going out this afternoon. Let's finish organizing the supplies." My dad took on the task of installing cameras in the hallway, the fire escape, and on the roof. My mom used a hose to fill the water tanks on the roof, and with some time to spare, started making dough for buns and steamed bread. I cleared a small area for working out. I laid down a rug and set up the stationary bike and dumbbells on it. That way, the people downstairs wouldn't hear any noise. By the time everything was set up, it was 5 p.m. I looked at our apartment, now resembling a small warehouse packed with supplies, and felt a deep sense of peace. My mom had already finished a batch of steamed buns and was starting on a new batch of dough for filled buns. While the dough was rising, I suggested we go out for a nice dinner. We were all exhausted, and no one felt like cooking. My parents happily agreed. The place we went to wasn't far, just a spicy Chinese restaurant about 200 yards from our building. The spicy food was perfect with rice. Thinking it might be our last meal in peaceful times, I ate 4 bowls of rice, so full I could barely walk. After resting for a bit, we saw a supermarket on the way back. Embracing a take-what-you-can't-eat philosophy, we went on another shopping spree. I bought a ton of snacks, my mom bought 10 cross-stitch kits, and my dad bought a chess set. Along with a few other odds and ends, we came out with 2 full shopping carts. We got back under the cover of darkness. We decided we wouldn't go out again tomorrow. We checked the entire apartment one more time, powered up the cameras to make sure they were working, and then locked the fire escape, adding 3 door jammers for good measure. Then we mixed the cement and used the leftover bricks from the roof to seal the elevator entrance on our floor. We nailed some wooden planks over it for extra reinforcement. To prevent anyone from breaking in from the roof, we installed slide bolts at the top and bottom of the rooftop access door, and wrapped a heavy chain with a padlock around the middle. Finally, we drew all the curtains tight, leaving only a tiny crack in the windows for ventilation. All the preparations were finally complete. By the time we finished, the buns were ready. They were white and fluffy, and the smell immediately made me hungry again. I ate one and with a full stomach, drifted off to sleep. I woke up at 7 a.m. Following my instructions, my parents moved around as quietly as possible. We had to hide our presence to avoid attracting attention and survive. 2 buns and a glass of soy milk later, I felt alive again. After cleaning up, my dad turned on the TV. My mom, taking advantage of the free time, called our relatives back home and, using the excuse of potential nuclear radiation contamination, warned them to stock up on food and supplies. I set up the binoculars and pulled back a tiny corner of the curtain to survey the outside. In my last life, the outbreak started around noon. It was still early. After confirming there was nothing unusual, I checked the charge on all our power banks, iPads, and phones. My mind was racing, and I couldn't sit still. I needed to keep busy to calm my nerves. After that, I hopped on the stationary bike for half an hour. After I had worked up a sweat and was cooling down, I talked to my parents about my idea for a fitness routine. They both agreed it was a great idea. My dad even immediately rode the bike for 45 minutes straight. And just like that, our plan of each person exercising for at least half an hour a day was set. After I cooled down, I took a shower. Once my parents were done with their workouts and showers, I threw the clothes in the washing machine. While we still had power and water, we had to enjoy these last moments of convenience. The three of us, fresh and clean, sat on the sofa, quietly discussing what to have for lunch. Suddenly, a blood-curdling scream cut through our conversation. I rushed to the binoculars. Even though I had lived through this once before, the sight still made me tremble. The area outside our building's gate was already stained with blood. Several bodies lay in pools of it. After a moment, the dead, their bodies twisting unnaturally, stood up and frantically lunged at the nearby pedestrians. "It started," I said, turning to my parents. They both came over and took a look through the binoculars. My dad's face went pale, and my mom clutched her chest in fear. I checked the curtains again, making sure not a sliver of light could get out. I led my parents back to the sofa. "Mom, Dad," I said quietly, "I was reborn, so I had time to prepare. But other people didn't. When the world falls apart and there's no order, people will be the most terrifying thing. We have to hide any trace of our existence. Don't respond to anyone asking for help. If people find out we have all these supplies." I didn't finish the sentence, but my fists clenched. This time, my family will survive. After my speech, my parents sat stiffly. After a moment, my mom nodded as if making a vow. "Don't worry, sweetie. We understand. Thanks to all your preparations, we're definitely going to make it." My dad nodded in agreement beside her. A wave of relief washed over me, and I couldn't help but hug them both. For lunch, we ate the steamed buns my mom made yesterday with some pickles. The sound of screams rising and falling outside made the food taste bitter. My dad turned on the TV. The news anchor's clear voice filled the room. "Good afternoon, citizens. Multiple incidents of random attacks have been reported across the city. The attackers, who are biting their victims, are suspected of having a highly contagious, rabies-like disease. We urge all citizens to purchase necessary supplies and stay home as much as possible. Please reduce outdoor activities." The anchor's words were accompanied by footage shot by brave reporters on the scene. The people in the video had pale, bluish skin, with black veins covering their bodies and cloudy, unfocused eyes. They were lunging at anyone who couldn't get away in time. My dad put down his bun and started scrolling through his phone. "Guys, I'm in another country right now, and there are zombies here. This is the US. The zombie outbreak started this morning. My whole street is gone. Someone help me. The outbreak started here this morning. I'm hiding under a bridge. I'm only 500 yards from my home." The voice cut off abruptly, replaced by the wet, slapping sound of flesh being eaten. My dad let out a heavy sigh and turned off his phone. The building's group chat was blowing up. Some people were still confused. "What's going on?" I woke up, and the world's gone crazy. Some were terrified. "It's zombies. It's really the end of the world." Some were grieving. "What are we going to do? My husband and kids aren't home yet." Some were angry. "What the hell is the management office doing? They're quick enough to collect HOA fees, but now that there's a disaster, they're nowhere to be seen." And some, like me, just watched in silence. After about 10 minutes, the property manager replied in the group. "To all residents. After a discussion, the management office has decided to close the main community gate and the underground parking garage entrance to ensure the safety of all residents." The group was instantly divided. The happy ones couldn't wait. "What are you waiting for? Close it now." The desperate ones cried out, "But what about my husband and kids? Are you just going to let them die?" As the two factions were about to start fighting, the manager added another message. "Due to 3 infections within our security team, we must first deal with the infected among us. If everything goes smoothly, we will close the gates this afternoon." The management office urges all residents to remember that protecting our community is protecting ourselves. Currently, there are not many infected inside the complex. If any volunteers are willing to step forward and help, we can speed up the process. At that, the group fell silent. Even the ones who had been shouting before said nothing. The property manager didn't reply again. The gates would never be closed. It was the same in my last life. They were just ordinary people, and their security team had already lost 3 members. Faced with a creature they had never seen before, who wouldn't be terrified? So one by one they fell. only to rise again as zombies. Their sense of duty ultimately led them to their deaths, and the community became even more dangerous as a result. After thinking it over, I couldn't help but send a private message to the property manager, a guy named Chun. Chun, are you guys planning to fight the zombies? I'm out of town visiting family right now, so I don't know what the situation is like there. Chun, yes. There aren't many zombies inside the complex yet. Most of them are outside, in the shopping centers and other crowded areas. We decided to clear out the ones inside as quickly as possible to reduce the risk for all the residents. It's an honor to have a management team like you. But in the movies, zombies are really sensitive to sound. If you make a lot of noise, you won't just attract the ones inside, but also the ones outside. Then you'll have a massive horde. The complex will be even more dangerous than it is now. Besides, you're not the army. You don't have professional-grade weapons. It'll be hard to protect yourselves in a crisis. I suggest you close the garage entrance first. Then find a safe place to hide and protect yourselves. I waited several minutes for a reply. Chun, I just passed your message on to my supervisor. He agrees with you. We've sent people to close the garage, and the rest of us are gathering supplies. We'll be on standby in the management office after that. Thank you. I believe we can get through this. Honestly, I was just looking out for myself. If they went out now, it would inevitably draw more zombies into the complex. I sent back an emoji and closed the chat. The building's group chat was active again. Someone had realized the problem of supplies and was offering high prices for food. That set off a chain reaction, and soon many people were bidding against each other. But with the outside world so dangerous and no way to leave, the food you had on hand was your last lifeline. Who would be willing to sell? I finished the last bite of my bun and checked the cameras. The hallway and fire escape were quiet. It was safe for now. I yawned and decided to take a nap. This was just the beginning of the outbreak. People were still fending for themselves. The real danger would come later, when people's supplies ran out and they became desperate. That's when the real chaos would begin. I woke up in the afternoon. My dad was reading, and my mom was working on her cross-stitch. A quiet, peaceful warmth filled the apartment, which was now piled high with supplies. A feeling of contentment I had never known before washed over me. My phone buzzed with a notification. I opened it. It was Chloe. Chloe, Jenna, are you home? There are so many zombies outside. I'm so scared. I rolled my eyes, deleted the message, and turned to my parents. Mom, Dad, I'm hungry. At the same time, my dad looked up from his book. Honey, I'm hungry too. My mom just sighed and went into the kitchen. My dad followed her in, tail wagging, to help out. Even though it was relatively safe for now, we still needed to set up a night watch in case of emergencies. We decided that my dad would take the first half of the night, and I would take the second. My mom, being the best cook, was put in charge of logistics, which included making a delicious late-night snack for the person on watch at 10:30 p.m. The first half of the night was quiet. When it was my turn, I carefully pulled back a sliver of the curtain and used the binoculars to check on the situation below. People were sound asleep. The zombie outbreak made the outside world seem even more desolate. The streetlights were no longer bright, but flickered on and off, probably due to damage from the riots earlier in the day. In the brief moments of light, I could see a few zombies wandering nearby, their mouths stained with blood. On the highway in the distance, a pile of cars from a chain reaction crash caused by the outbreak was stacked like a small mountain. The entire city was shrouded in a deathly silence. After confirming there were no immediate threats, I gently closed the curtain, pulled out my portable stove to boil some water, and grabbed eggs and ham from the fridge to make some spicy Korean fire noodles. It was already early fall, and the nights were getting a little chilly. I threw on a jacket. While I still had internet, I scrolled through my phone while waiting for the water to boil. The government had already issued an official notice, urging citizens to stay indoors. International news reports showed that the entire world had fallen. Social media was filled with pleas for help and supplies. Soon the water was bubbling. I put the noodle block in first. Once the noodles were soft and translucent, I drained some of the water, squeezed in the sauce packet, and stirred it for about 10 seconds. Then I cracked an egg in, covered the pot to let it steam, and sprinkled some seaweed flakes on top. The noodles were chewy, the egg was perfectly cooked, and the sweet and spicy sauce was amazing. Sitting under the warm yellow light of my small lamp, watching Breaking Bad and eating, I couldn't imagine a happier moment. The first night passed safely. After breakfast, I went back to my room to catch up on sleep. Out of habit, I scrolled through my phone before bed and saw a missed call. It was Chloe. I opened my messages and saw several more from her. I skimmed them. It was the usual mix of pity-seeking lies and delusional requests for me to rescue her. I didn't bother replying, turned off my phone, pulled the covers over my head, and fell asleep instantly. 2 more days passed. In those 2 days, other than Chloe's occasional messages, nothing much happened. When it was my turn for night watch, I started with my usual routine of scanning the area with the binoculars. The streetlights were completely out now, and there seemed to be more zombies outside than yesterday. Over the past couple of days, I'd noticed that the zombies were faster during the day, but became sluggish at night. Some even stood motionless in one spot, as if they needed to rest too. This meant that if you had to go outside, it was relatively safer to do so at night. As I was thinking this, I caught a glimpse of 2 dark figures slipping out of the entrance of the building across from mine. I focused the binoculars on them. It was a man and a woman, who looked like a couple. They each had a large hiking backpack on. It looked like they were going on a supply run. As soon as they stepped out, a zombie lingering by the entrance spotted them. But they were quick. With a swift, silent move, one of them took the zombie out with a blow to the head. They quickly smeared the zombie's blood all over the raincoats they were wearing. The scene sent a shiver down my spine. I had to admire them. I watched as they carefully made their way towards the main gate. The zombie blood must have worked, because the few zombies they passed didn't seem to notice the 2 living people. When they disappeared around the corner of the gate, I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. It was already 3:30 a.m. The sun would be up in about 3 hours. Since there was a large supermarket not far from our complex, I guess they wouldn't go far. Sure enough, just an hour and a half later, they were back. Their backpacks were stuffed to the brim, and they were each carrying a large duffel bag. It looked like they'd had a very successful trip. Watching them return to their building just as cautiously as they had left, I let out a long sigh. That was intense. Recalling the couple's quick reactions in a crisis, their strength and speed, I figured they must be regular gym goers. I even joked to myself that half of their haul was probably protein powder. I shook my head at my own ridiculous thought. After one last check to make sure everything was quiet outside, I closed the curtains and started playing games on my phone. The couple's successful supply run must have been seen by someone, because on the 4th night, others started to follow their example. First were a pair of brothers from the next building over. They were young and moved quickly. One of them threw a bag of what looked like meat into the middle of the road. While the zombies were drawn by the smell of blood and gathered to feast, the brothers, hidden under a sheet, quickly took down a lone zombie and smeared its blood all over themselves before disappearing around the corner. Behind them, from the same building, was a young woman. She had a large backpack and was carrying a machete. She followed about 6 feet behind the brothers, and also vanished around the corner. Impressive. It seemed our complex had some hidden talents. Last was a middle-aged man from my own building. He was alone, and his steps were a bit unsteady. I remembered his profile picture on the group chat was always a selfie. He loved to spout empty platitudes in the chat, was a bit of a mama's boy, and was known for being blindly obedient to his mother, who had divorced his father long ago. 6 months prior, his mom's meddling had driven his wife to take their daughter and leave. Now he was living with his bratty son and his passive-aggressive mother, at the very bottom of the family food chain. His story was a famous piece of gossip in our complex. His appearance made the whole thing more interesting. Seeing the 2 successful examples disappear around the corner, he tried to follow, his hands trembling. But he didn't notice that a few zombies had already finished their meal and were wandering off. So he copied the others and threw the piece of meat he was carrying to attract the zombies' attention. But in his nervousness, he threw the meat less than 6 feet away from himself. He was trying to lure the zombies away, but instead, he just rang the dinner bell for a feast. The zombies swarmed towards him, the big, living meal. His legs started to shake, and he let out a loud scream as he ran back into the building. At the same time, his son's shriek cut through the night, "Daddy!" followed by his mother's angry yell, "My meat!" This attracted even more zombies to the building's entrance, which ironically provided a safe return for the two brothers and the young woman who had gone on the supply run. They made it back to their homes without a problem. I was speechless. This man was a complete disaster. In the dead of night, any sound was piercingly loud. His commotion had drawn most of the nearby zombies over. And to make matters worse, the building's entrance had glass doors for aesthetic reasons, which offered no real protection. This family was really something else. Just then, I heard a loud crash from downstairs. The glass door had shattered. The zombies poured in, even more frenzied than before. My parents woke up from the noise and came to see what was happening. I quickly explained the situation to them. They were so angry they could only slap their thighs in frustration. The group chat exploded again. All the residents of our building were tagging the man and cursing him out. Everyone had seen others successfully find supplies and wanted to try, but now, thanks to this guy, no one in our building could even think about leaving. The collective rage was palpable. I was scrolling through the messages when a new one caught my eye. Resident 1701, help. These zombies have gotten smart. I saw them on my security camera. They're taking the elevator. There are 4 or 5 of them. The panic in the group intensified. The messages cursing the man started flooding the chat. My heart skipped a beat, but then I realized the zombies must have accidentally hit the elevator button. Still, if that was possible. Mom, Dad, we need to reinforce the wall we built in front of the elevator. No sooner said than done. None of us could sleep after that anyway. We got the leftover cement and bricks, checked the cameras to make sure the coast was clear, and then quietly opened the door to start adding another layer to the brick wall in front of the elevator. My dad was the main bricklayer. I stood guard by the fire escape door, keeping an eye on things and checking my phone. The resident on the 17th floor was still panicking, which in turn set off Chloe, who lived on the floor above them. She started bombarding me with messages. One after another, they went from pitiful pleas for help to angry, screaming demands. The increasing number of exclamation points told me all I needed to know about her emotional state. Suddenly, I had an idea. It was risky, but it was worth a shot. A moment later, I replied to Chloe with a picture. A bag of instant noodles, some small pastries, and a few bottles of water. A few seconds after I sent it, she replied, "Chloe, is that for me? I knew you were the best." I sneered and typed back, "Yes. I'll leave it in the fire escape stairwell. It'll take me 20 minutes. Go get it after 20 minutes. Chloe, but I'm scared. Me, it's just a few steps from the fire escape door on your floor. If you're really that scared, then I won't bring it. Chloe, okay. I'll go get it." I didn't reply. I went back inside and got my drone. My dad was almost finished with the wall. I pulled my parents aside and explained my plan. When they heard we had to go downstairs, they both shook their heads frantically. I had to patiently explain. "Mom, Dad, this is just the beginning. Right now, it's just a natural disaster. We haven't gotten to the man-made part yet. But like I told you before, as time goes on and the world loses all order, people will even resort to cannibalism. If we take precautions now, it will protect us later." My mom's eyes were red, but she didn't say anything. My dad, however, after a moment of thought, nodded in agreement. We didn't waste any more time. My dad tied a hook to a thick rope. I did a few test flights with the drone inside the apartment. Once I was comfortable, I took half a chicken from the freezer and tied it to the drone. Just in case, my dad and I both put on helmets and thick down coats, and we even strapped a few books to our arms for extra padding. Fully armed, we unbolted the fire escape door and quietly crept down the stairs. The zombies had only made it up to the 17th floor, and since they couldn't open doors, they were probably just milling around near the elevator. As we passed the 19th floor, I put a padlock on the fire escape door. When we reached the 18th floor, I placed the supplies I had promised Chloe a short distance from the fire escape door, took a picture, and then flew the drone down to hover above the 17th floor fire escape door. By now, the chicken on the drone had started to thaw, and blood was dripping from it. My dad hooked the modified hook onto the 17th floor fire escape door handle and, standing back on the landing between the 17th and 18th floors, gently pulled. The door creaked open a crack. The drone buzzed in front of the opening. The zombies, smelling the blood in the air, lunged towards the drone. The drone circled above them. Through the camera, I counted 4 of them. My heart was pounding. The zombies were less than 15 feet away from me. Once all the zombies were in the stairwell, my dad gently released the tension on the rope and pulled the hook back. We retreated back up to the 20th floor, leaving the drone to lure them upwards. By now 20 minutes had passed. I sent the picture I had just taken to Chloe. She immediately called me. Her voice was trembling. "Jenna, I'm a little scared." "It's okay," I said. "It was pretty safe when I went down to leave the stuff. If you're scared, we can stay on the phone while you go get it." "Oh, I'm going now." I could hear Chloe's footsteps. She was leaving her apartment. At that moment, the zombies, chasing the drone, had reached the landing between the 17th and 18th floors. I heard the sound of Chloe's door opening and closing. Her excited voice came through the phone. "I see it. Thanks, Jenna." I hung up. Through the drone's camera, I watched as Chloe was devoured by the zombies. A moment later, she staggered to her feet, one of them. "Chloe," I thought, "consider this payback for the last life. And now you can help me guard the door." A strange feeling washed over me, but I pushed it away. I continued to pilot the drone, luring the zombies to the landing between the 19th and 20th floors. I dropped the chicken, and while they were busy eating, I flew the drone back. I re-bolted the door and put the jammers back in place. Back inside, my dad and I were both drenched in a cold sweat. We collapsed onto the sofa, gasping for air. My mom rushed over with towels and took our down coats into the other room. My dad knew what I had done, but he didn't say a word. He just waited until we had caught our breath, then patted my hand. "My dear daughter, you must be exhausted. Get some rest." My eyes stung with tears. I nodded. The sky outside was turning from black to a deep blue. Dawn was breaking. After that day, I added a new task to my daily routine: checking on the zombies through the cameras. The drone became my sheepdog, keeping the zombies corralled in that section of the stairwell. Every 5 days, I would take out a small piece of meat to feed them. I was raising my own zombie guard dogs. 2 months passed. Fall was setting in, and the weather was getting colder. I woke up, checked the cameras, confirmed the zombies' location, and then started on breakfast. Today's breakfast was tomato and egg noodles, my mom's specialty and one of my favorites. The power, water, and internet had all gone out a week ago. With no connection to the outside world, everything suddenly felt quiet. The weather wasn't great today, so the solar panels weren't generating much power. To save electricity, we agreed that each person could only use electronic devices for 40 minutes a day. In the past 2 months, the number of zombies outside had grown. Most of the people in our complex had run out of food and supplies. Some couldn't take it anymore and jumped from their balconies. Others went out in search of supplies and never came back. The decreasing population only thickened the cloud of despair. My family and I stuck to our daily exercise routine. We could now do half an hour of weightlifting followed by 45 minutes of cycling without a break. Our physical fitness had improved significantly. Today was a rare sunny day. I took my parents to the roof to soak up some sun and lay out the solar panels. The bok choy we had planted last week was growing well, the leaves already the size of my finger. My dad was grinning from ear to ear. My mom sat in a chair, crocheting. It was a sweater vest, made from cashmere yarn she had stockpiled from the supermarket the night before the outbreak. It was a lovely shade of pink and was already half finished. I laid out a picnic blanket on the ground, munching on snacks while watching my mom work. As I ate, we discussed what to have for lunch. "Mom, Dad, we haven't had hot pot in ages. How about we have hot pot for lunch?" "Sounds great. I'll go get the ingredients ready," my dad said, watering the plants before happily jogging downstairs. My mom had made so many buns and steamed bread before that we had no space in the freezer and didn't want them to go to waste. We had been forced to eat them for 2 straight weeks. Now that they were finally gone, we could finally treat our taste buds. As I was thinking about what to put in the hot pot, my dad ran back up, his face beaming. There are a bunch of cars downstairs. They're green. I think it's the army. My mom's face lit up. My heart started to race. I pulled my parents down from the roof and back into the apartment, locking the door securely behind us. I motioned for them to sit on the sofa and not move. Then, I lifted a corner of the curtain and looked through the binoculars. About 7 or 8 vehicles were parked in the open space below. They were mostly green SUVs, each one reinforced with steel bars and covered in sharp spikes. The mangled remains of a few zombies were still impaled on the spikes. They first cleared out the zombies that had been drawn by the noise. Once the area was secure, they opened their doors and started a fire to cook. The appearance of the convoy seemed to lift the gloom that had settled over the complex. About a dozen or so surviving families, thinking it was the army, excitedly opened their windows and started waving for help. Should we call for help? My parents asked, worried the army might leave and we'd miss our chance to be rescued. Let's wait, I said, trying to calm them. Let's just watch for a bit. The people who got out of the cars were a mix of men and women. The leader was a man with a beer belly and dark, weathered skin. He gave off an air of menace. A pretty woman was clinging to his side, feeding him grapes. The man glanced up at the people waving for help, then went back to enjoying the grapes being fed to him. They're not the army, I said, turning back to my parents. Let's stay off the roof for a few days. The joy on my parents' faces instantly vanished. For lunch, to be safe, we just ate some compressed biscuits and canned meat. I checked all the cameras again, including the ones on our zombie guard dogs in the stairwell. After confirming everything was secure, I focused on observing the convoy. While they were eating, I counted about 30 of them. Mostly men, with a few women. They had plenty of supplies. They were even roasting a leg of lamb for lunch. The lamb sizzled as it cooked, and the smell of cumin and chili powder wafted through the air, teasing the nostrils of the hungry. It wasn't just us. The others, who had been starving for a long time, couldn't hold back. A person from a lower floor even ran downstairs. I watched as they spoke with the convoy leader. I couldn't hear what was said, but at the end, the leader nodded to 2 of his men. The 2 men understood immediately and went with the person into their building. The person's face was filled with joy, and the 2 men walking with them had a strange, unreadable smile on their faces. My view was cut off as the 3 of them entered the building. I didn't know what happened next. I put down the binoculars and sat down, leaning against the wall. I had a bad feeling. I felt like something terrible was about to happen. Those people just didn't look like good people. My mom also took a look through the binoculars. Jenna was right, she muttered. These people don't look right at all. Would the army act like that? They have no sense of decency. My dad joined in. If both of you say they're no good, then they're probably no good. My mom, feeling validated, started an excited discussion with my dad. I quietly pulled the curtain shut and got ready to work out. I was just changing my shoes when a piercing scream made me jump. My heart pounded in my chest. I exchanged a look with my parents and rushed back to the binoculars. It was the man who had gone down to talk to the convoy. In just a few short minutes, he looked like a different person. His face was swollen like a pig's, and he was covered in blood. He was standing on his windowsill, screaming like a madman. After a few shouts, he slipped and fell from the 5th floor. A few minutes later, the 2 men came back down. They brought a 2 or 3-year-old child and a disheveled woman with them. The smell of blood attracted a few zombies, which the convoy quickly dealt with. The leader looked at the prey his men had brought back and clapped them on the shoulders in approval. With a wave of his hand, the 2 men knew what to do. The child's mouth was forced open, its tongue was cut out, and it was thrown into an iron cage. The woman was knocked unconscious and given to the other men, who had been watching with hungry eyes. "They're animals," my mom whispered, her voice filled with rage. After their filthy business was done, the animals were even more excited. If it wasn't still light out, they probably would have had a bonfire party. I saw the people who had been excitedly calling for help earlier quietly close their windows. In the afternoon, the leader gathered his men around, seemingly for a meeting. It didn't last long. After the leader spoke, he pointed his finger in the air. I followed his gesture. He was pointing at the apartments of the families who had been calling for help. The leader dropped his hand, left a few men to stand guard, and the rest of his crew grabbed their weapons and headed for their first target. "Those people deserve to die," my mom said, gritting her teeth in anger as she listened to the commotion outside. "I know," I nodded. "It looks like they get all their supplies by robbing and killing. This world has just emboldened them. They're ruthless, cruel. They deserve to be wiped out. From the looks of it, they're not planning on leaving anytime soon," my dad said, his brow furrowed as he looked around our apartment. "They're so brutal, they're bound to go door to door. If they stay here much longer, they'll find us. We have to do something to get rid of them," he concluded. I gave my dad a thumbs up. The old man had some foresight. "I'll fly the drone out and scout the area," I said. "If we can lure the zombies over to deal with these animals." My mom grabbed my arm. "Even if the zombies take care of them, how many zombies will be left in our complex? That would be dangerous too, wouldn't it?" "Zombies are mindless," my dad explained. "They won't actively come upstairs to search for people. As long as we don't attract their attention, we'll still be safe." "He's right, Mom," I added. "And if we have to, I can just use the drone to lead them away again." My mom finally relaxed and nodded. No sooner said than done. I tied a piece of pork to the drone, opened the door, and launched it from the other end of the hallway. The drone flew around the convoy and out the side of the complex. The pork, now thawing, started to drip blood. I flew towards a nearby shopping center, which was now in ruins. Further towards the city center, it was even more devastating. There weren't even any birds in the sky. The whole world was shrouded in a deathly stillness. Fortunately, there were plenty of zombies along the way. I deliberately flew at a low altitude. The dripping blood from the pork on the drone slowly attracted small groups of zombies, which eventually merged into a massive zombie army. While I was flying, my dad was watching the convoy with the binoculars. It had been about 40 minutes since the men went upstairs. They probably hadn't found much. Other than a few meager supplies, they only brought down a malnourished man. The men then continued to the next building. Meanwhile, my zombie army was less than a mile away from the complex. The search of the next building didn't seem to be going well. Perhaps having seen what happened to their neighbors, the residents, in their desperation, chose to fight back. I heard the sound of breaking glass and angry shouts. On the 5th floor of one building, a surviving family was trying to defend their home with kitchen knives. But they had been starving for so long. How could they be a match for these brutes? After the shouts and screams died down, I heard a series of thuds, the sound of heavy objects hitting the ground. The remaining men went to the window, cursed viciously, and smashed the remaining glass with their machetes before leaving. "They threw them out the window," my dad said, his eyes red. He couldn't bear to watch anymore. My mom poured him a glass of water. This was just an interruption for the remaining dozen or so men, who continued their plundering. The zombie army I was leading was about to arrive when something surprising happened. Not far from the complex, I encountered another drone. This one had an alarm clock attached to it. When our drones met, the other one circled mine a few times and then started flying slowly towards the complex. I think I understood what it meant. So I continued to lead my zombie army forward. The zombies dragged their bodies, making a guttural heh-heh sound. The sheer number of them created a massive, shuffling roar. The convoy was parked in the open space in the center of the complex. The zombies were now entering the main gate, less than 150 feet away. I increased my speed. At that moment, the alarm clock on the other drone went off without warning. The sharp, piercing sound instantly agitated the zombies and caught the attention of the convoy. With a silent understanding, the other drone and I split up. The screaming alarm and the dripping pork divided the zombie army into two streams, surrounding the convoy from both sides. The other men were still busy looting in the buildings. The ones left behind were so scared their legs were shaking. The leader shoved the man he had dragged down from the building into the zombie horde. While the zombies were feasting, he jumped into his car. The other men saw this and scrambled to get into their vehicles and start the engines. Left behind were the child in the iron cage, the desperate woman, and the woman who had been by the leader's side. By now, the zombies had finished devouring the man, and were less than 15 feet away. The woman first managed to get the child and the other woman into a car and shut the door. Then she pulled a gun from the passenger seat, walked straight to the leader's car, and fired through the window. Bang! Bang! 2 shots rang out. One ended the leader's life. The other ended her own. I piloted my drone to circle above the cars of the other men. The zombies quickly smashed the windows and pulled everyone inside out, finishing them off. The dozen or so men who had been looting the buildings were also led into a trap by us, and were mostly wiped out by the zombies. In the cars below, only the mother and child remained. I used my drone to lure some of the zombies away from the car, then circled around the outside of the complex a few times before flying back home. I retrieved the drone and wiped the grime off it. I collapsed onto the sofa. My parents and I just looked at each other, unable to speak for a long time. A month had passed since we took out the convoy. There had been no more crises in the complex. Perhaps because the human population had dwindled, the entire complex was now eerily empty. My parents and I had recovered from the shock of that day. We exercised, ate well, and found a strange sense of contentment. How about we have dumplings for dinner tonight? My mom asked, peeking out from the kitchen. Sounds good. Let's make them with cabbage and pork, I agreed. The cabbage Dad planted is ready to be picked. My dad happily went up to the roof to pick the cabbage. I went to the kitchen to help my mom with the dough. I mixed warm water with yeast, then poured it into the flour and mixed it with chopsticks until it formed a shaggy dough. Then I kneaded it by hand. While I kneaded, my mom chopped the pork filling. My dad came down with the cabbage and joined our little assembly line. The 3 of us, squeezed into the small kitchen, were safe from the desolation outside. My heart felt warm. In this apocalyptic world, this moment was true happiness. The fragrant dumplings were ready. The 3 of us sat down with our bowls to watch The Office. I took a sip of the broth first. It had dried shrimp and seaweed in it, so savory. Then I savored the dumplings while laughing at the show. We still took turns on night watch. With no electricity or internet, we were living a semi-primitive life. After dinner, we walked around the living room for half an hour to digest, then got ready for bed. This regular routine had even made the 2 stubborn pimples on my face disappear. That night, I was on watch, reading by the light of a small lamp. I saw a drone again, flying low over the zombies, slowly leading them away. I looked closely. It was a familiar drone, the one that had helped me lead the zombies to surround the convoy. Then 2 familiar figures emerged from the darkness. It was the couple. I never would have guessed the drone was theirs. I watched as they quickly dispatched a few lone zombies and disappeared around the corner of the main gate. It seemed they had been doing well. At the same time, the woman and child who had been trapped in the car used the opportunity, while the couple was luring the zombies away, to slip into a nearby empty house. I was amazed by their courage and happy that the woman had found the will to live again. I smiled, put down my binoculars, and went back to my book. Another month passed. Snow began to fall, and the temperature dropped. Our whole family, dressed in down coats, went to the roof to build a small shelter for our vegetables. The solar panels had been put away. I placed a few empty barrels in their spot to collect snowmelt for washing. In half a month, it would be the new year. My mom, in a rare celebratory mood, stewed a whole pork knuckle. We sat in the living room, dipping the tender shoots we had just picked into the pork knuckle hot pot. The pork skin was springy, the broth was rich. I ate 2 large bowls of rice with it, and had to ride the stationary bike for an hour to digest. We still had a lot of supplies left. Combined with the potatoes and sweet potatoes we had planted recently, our family of 3 could survive for a few more years if we were frugal. But I believed we wouldn't have to wait that long. I was sure the country would rescue us. Before we get rescued, let's just focus on getting through this year, my dad said, tapping my head. You're right, I nodded and started helping to bring the dishes to the table. Today was New Year's Eve. According to our family tradition, we started our New Year's Eve dinner at 8 a.m. Of course, in our current situation, we couldn't have a grand feast like before the apocalypse, but my parents insisted on keeping the tradition alive. They woke up at 5 a.m. to prepare. To celebrate our first New Year in the apocalypse, my dad even opened a bottle of wine. I raised my glass. Mom, Dad, here's to getting through this and living to 100. My parents smiled and raised their glasses too. Clink. The sound of the glasses was crisp and clear. stir-fried cured pork with garlic scapes, steamed cured fish, stewed pork knuckle, stir-fried potato shreds, and seaweed soup, a full 4 dishes and a soup. It was clear how much effort my mom had put into creating this impossible feast. I kept praising how delicious it was and ate 2 bowls of rice. After dinner, I took on the responsibility of cleaning up. Thankfully, I had bought a large number of disposable bowls and chopsticks, so all I had to do was gather the trash and throw it out. Before going out, I checked the cameras as usual. After confirming everything was clear, I quietly opened the door. 3 days ago, we had run out of space for our trash. So, with a guilty conscience, my dad and I had pried open the lock of the unrenovated apartment next door. It had become our new garbage dump. After dumping the trash, I quickly came back inside. As I was closing the door, I heard my parents sigh. Someone else jumped. This was the 4th one in the last 2 weeks. A wave of sadness washed over me too. If I hadn't opened the door for Chloe in my last life, how long would I have survived? Once my food ran out, with my physical condition, I would have either starved to death or been eaten by zombies. And that's not even considering the ruthless gang we encountered. The more I thought about it, the more grateful I was for this second chance. I had my family, food, and the ability to protect myself. I was truly content. But others weren't as lucky as me. People in the complex were jumping to their deaths, being eaten by zombies while searching for supplies, or bravely driving away, never to be seen again. Gradually, the number of people dwindled. This was probably a microcosm of the whole world. Humanity was disappearing. I shook my head, walked over, and took my parents' hands. We have to keep living, I said firmly. To distract ourselves, I suggested we go to the roof to check on the vegetables. As always, we checked the situation outside first. After confirming it was safe, we slowly went up to the roof. Even though it was winter, a faint, foul smell of decay still hung in the air. With fewer humans, the number of zombies had increased. When summer came, the situation would be even worse. We needed to prepare in advance, getting more masks and other protective gear. Because we had built the shelter, the vegetables weren't too affected by the cold. The green onions looked lush and vibrant. The chives we had planted a while back were ready to be harvested. My dad took a pair of scissors and carefully cut them at the root. We got a small handful, enough for 1 meal. After harvesting the new growth, my dad tilled the yellowed leaves back into the soil as fertilizer. My mom and I built a snowman nearby. Thankfully, the roof's parapet was high, so unless someone was looking down from directly above, they wouldn't easily see what was happening on the roof. A buzzing sound suddenly cut through the quiet. My parents and I all looked towards the source of the noise. It was a drone, hovering about 6 feet above our heads. "We're caught," my mom whispered. My heart pounded in my chest. "Let's get back inside," I said, pulling them towards the door. But the drone swooped down and stopped in front of us. A piece of paper and a carton of eggs were attached to it. I hadn't seen it clearly from a distance, but up close, I recognized it. It was our old friend. I let out a sigh of relief and turned to my parents. "Mom, Dad, remember I told you about the other drone that helped us take out that gang? This is it." Hearing that, my parents' faces relaxed. I walked over and took the note. It read, "Hello, I live in the building across from you. Do you have any fever medicine? My wife has a fever. I'd like to trade for some." We still had a few boxes of fever reducers. I looked at my parents, and we all knew what the other was thinking. I waved at the drone to wait, and the 3 of us went back downstairs. Medicine was a precious commodity in the apocalypse. A common cold or fever was nothing before, but now, a small fever could be a death sentence. And who knew how long this would last? I needed to save the medicine for my family. But because of what happened last time, I could give them some. But only 1 pill. "Mom, Dad, you stay here. I'll take it up." I put 1 pill in a plastic bag and went back to the roof. I tied the bag to the drone and took the carton of eggs. I watched the drone fly away before coming back down. Since we had fresh chives and eggs, how could we not make chive pockets? So, we got to work. Mixing the filling, kneading the dough, and helping out, our family of 3 had a clear division of labor. Soon, the chive pockets were ready. We turned on the portable stove and slowly pan-fried them. "Jenna, Do you think that drone will cause any trouble? My mom asked, her voice filled with worry. Don't worry, Mom, I reassured her. They don't know which apartment we live in. Otherwise, why would they contact us on the roof? And from what I've seen of them, they don't seem like bad people. Even if they knew where we lived, and even if they were bad people, I would do everything in my power to protect our family. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it, my dad said. Besides, they were very polite. They even brought eggs. In times like these, that's a rare thing. I realized he was right. There were 6 eggs in the carton. Unless they were raising their own chickens, that was a very valuable item. They wouldn't have given it up if they weren't truly in need. Don't worry, Mom. My mom finally relaxed. Just then, the chive pockets were golden and crispy, ready to be eaten. Our family of 3 happily devoured the precious food. Despite this, we agreed to go to the roof less often from now on. A week later, my dad, unable to bear his worry for the seedlings, finally went up to the roof alone. I gave him the stun baton I had bought before the apocalypse, just in case. I was surprised by how quickly he came back. He was gone for less than 5 minutes. But what he was holding in his hand silenced me. It was a small, pale pink flower. The petals were curled, and a note was attached to it. Thank you for the fever medicine. My wife has recovered. She planted this flower before. There's not much nutrition in the soil now, so it didn't grow very well. I didn't think it was appropriate, but she insisted on sending it to you. She said that life is resilient. If these plants can bloom now, then we humans can also live on with resilience. So I didn't stop her. I hope you will accept it. Happy New Year. The note was dated 2 days ago. No wonder the flower was a bit wilted. But seeing it now, it felt incredibly precious. My parents were also very moved. I carefully placed the flower in a small vase. After thinking for a moment, I wrote a reply on a piece of paper, put it in a red plastic bag with 2 packs of instant noodles, and left it on the roof. After that, my dad still went to the roof every few days to check on his plants. And from that day on, our 2 families started communicating. In our later correspondence, we learned their names. The man was Mark, and the woman was Emily. And they really were fitness enthusiasts. To support their hobby, they had a large supply of rice, flour, and other staples, as well as supplements. But they were short on fresh vegetables. So we gave them some of the vegetable seeds and mung beans we had stockpiled, as a thank you for their fitness advice. Winter passed and spring arrived. As the weather warmed up, I suggested to my parents that we prepare more masks. I hadn't thought of it when I was first stocking up, and was already planning on making them by hand. But then my mom suddenly produced 10 boxes of N95 masks. I was so impressed I gave her a thumbs up. I was worried the pandemic would make a comeback during all this, she said proudly. So I bought a bunch. They weren't expensive anyway. Summer came, and the scorching sun beat down on the earth. Everything that had been frozen in winter was now exposed. The outside world could only be described as a desolate wasteland. The wrecked cars on the highway were rusting. The ground was littered with white skeletons and rotting corpses, both human and animal. The zombies still dragged their bodies along the streets, swarms of flies circling them. A foul stench constantly emanated from them. I was worried the air was toxic, so at the beginning of summer, I had used cotton cloth to stuff all the vents in our apartment as a simple filter. If we had to go out to throw away trash or go to the roof, we had to wear our masks tightly. I had also told Mark and Emily about this in a message, and gave them 2 boxes of masks. The temperature kept rising, and as we approached the height of summer, my dad was worried the stench would affect the vegetables. He suggested we bring everything down and replant when the weather cooled off. My mom and I agreed. So we all went up to pack. I wrote a note to leave for Mark and Emily's drone, telling them we wouldn't be on the roof for the next few months, and that they shouldn't come over or open their windows. We would contact them again when the weather cooled down and the smell dissipated. As luck would have it, just as we went up, we saw their drone. A black plastic bag was hanging from it. I took the bag. Inside was a small bundle of mung bean sprouts and a walkie-talkie. A note was attached to the back of the walkie-talkie with instructions, and a message expressing their desire to continue communicating. It looked like I wouldn't need to leave my note after all. I held the walkie-talkie and waved at the drone, and it flew away. My parents were almost done packing. We worked together to carry the reusable items downstairs and put them in a cool place. At our doorstep, we did a quick full-body disinfection with alcohol, then went inside and turned on the walkie-talkie. After a brief crackle of static, I said softly, "Hello? Can you hear me?" A reply came back almost immediately. It was a clear female voice. "Hello. We can finally talk," my mom said, unable to contain her excitement. "I know. Thank you so much for the walkie-talkies," Emily's voice replied. "It feels so good not to feel like we're the only 3 people left in the world," my dad added, his voice full of joy. "The bean sprouts you sent were delicious." We talked about everything from the day we led the zombies to take out the convoy, to gardening tips, to fitness advice. We talked for a full 3 hours before we finally remembered the battery life and signed off. Thankfully, the walkie-talkies were solar-powered, so a little sun was all they needed. That night, my parents were still buzzing with excitement, talking about what it would be like when our 2 families finally met. The stench gradually faded as summer passed. Fall arrived and we started planting vegetables again. We also resumed our drone-based exchanges with Mark and Emily. One day, I would send a bunch of green onions, and the next, she would send half a tub of protein powder. Our 2 families grew closer. We supported each other like this until the 4th year of the apocalypse. It was snowing. I attached a freshly made cured pork bun to the drone and sent it over to Mark and Emily's. After retrieving the drone, I closed the window, rubbing my hands together, ready to enjoy a hot pot with my parents. By now, our 2 families were probably the only ones left in the entire complex. We hadn't seen any sign of the mother and child in a long time. The hot steam rose and warmed my face. I happily picked up a piece of Spam and put it in my mouth. My mom had added extra chili to the broth to warm us up. The spice made us all grin and wince, but it definitely warmed us up. After dinner, we could even go up to the roof and plant a couple more things. It was in this moment of peaceful routine that, without any warning, we heard the deafening roar of helicopter blades. At the same time, a loud electronic voice boomed across the sky. "All survivors. Please pay attention to all the survivors. Please note that it lasted for 4 years. The country has developed an antiviral vaccine. Prepare for a unified killing of all zombies across the country 3 days later. Dear survivors, please stay at home and don't go out. All survivors. Please pay attention to all the survivors. Please note." The helicopter continued to make announcements and flew far away. The 3 of us lay by the window to have a look. It's really a country. It is an army dispatched by the state. I couldn't help bursting into tears. Embrace with parents. Parents are the real army. We are finally going to be saved 3 days later. A thick white fog was sprayed from the sky. We could finally pull back the curtains and look at the world outside. The moment the white fog touched a zombie, the zombie would dissolve into a puddle of black liquid. It took another 5 days for all the zombies to be eliminated and the black sludge to be cleaned up. That evening, the electronic broadcast, accompanied by the roar of helicopter blades, once again echoed through the sky. "All survivors, please pay attention to all the survivors. Please note that all the zombies have been cleared away. You can come out and have free time. At present, the country is already in the east, south, west, and north. Survivor bases have been established everywhere. The nearest base is located at Guanshan, which is 100 kilometers away from here. The country hereby calls on all survivors to unite, rebuild a new homeland." The helicopter repeated the good news. The helicopter repeated the good news as it flew away. The first thing we did was turn on the walkie-talkie to share the news with Mark and Emily. We agreed to meet in the community square the next day. The 4-year nightmare was finally over. Our perseverance had paid off. Now it was time to rebuild. The end.